Hello and welcome to Truth versus Hype. At the end of a week where the public appearances by Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi were almost eclipsed by the war between their Twitter followers, some are asking, is social media just a platform for engaging in irrelevant skirmishes? Or have these digital platforms reached a critical mass where they can no longer be ignored? To put it more bluntly, have Facebook users become large enough to now be considered a vote bank? This much is true. A few days after their leaders and their followers slugged it out online and offline, the representatives of some of India's best-known PR and social media marketing agencies like Mahesh Murthy of Pinstorm, S. Swaminathan of Iris Services and Dilip Cherian of Perfect Relations found themselves making pitches to political strategists of the Congress and BJP.
My reading at the initial stages is that everybody is interested. The two major national parties are seriously interested, and you can see that some of them have already started playing in that battlefield.
Calling in the professionals is a step up for political parties, for whom social media strategy has largely meant a mix of volunteers and old-timers updating websites and sending emails from some dingy back room. So what's changed? For politicians to take Facebook seriously? Mainly the numbers. At the time of the 2009 election, there were only about 1.6 million social media users. But today, that number has jumped to 65 million, roughly 5% of the population. And by the time of the projected next election, in late 2013 or early 14, that figure could go up to almost 80 million. Politicians are also apparently impressed with social media's role in the recent street protests, like the ones after Mumbai's 26/11 attacks, the Anna Hazare agitation, and the protests sparked by the Delhi gang rape. But is social media just a mobilizing force in big cities? The experts argue otherwise.
To see these constituencies, they're not just the urban conglomerates, but they're also like the Delhi-Chandigarh, corridor. They're the Bombay-Ahmedabad corridor. They're the Bangalore-Chennai corridor. There's the Andhra Pradesh East Coast, Visakhapatnam kind of area. A lot of these places now have significant pockets of social media and digital existence.
Groups like IRIS have now sliced the data further to demonstrate its relevance in an Indian election. IRIS mapped Facebook users by Lok Sabha constituencies to find that in about 160 constituencies, the number of Facebook users was higher than the margin of victory. For instance, the margin of victory in Thane constituency was 49,000 votes. The number of Facebook users in Thane, over 4 lakhs.
I'm not saying they'll vote as a community. I'm just saying the potential for them to influence the election is fairly high. So that's what we call the high impact constituencies. That's about 160 of them.
This study does admit that it's a highly simplistic exercise, and it is. There is no deeper research into how many Facebook users are voters, or whether they are politically engaged at all, or whether there's any evidence to suggest that social media can influence election outcomes.
Given the peer pressure that you will see on account of Facebook activity, it's also likely, given again that the bulk of these voters are probably first-time voters, most of them are below the age of 25, it can have an impact in terms of voter turnout as well. So when you combine all these things together, the contention is not that they will vote as a community and that they will determine who will win or lose. It's just basically saying they have a critical mass to influence the outcome in the next election.
We don't quite know for sure why people vote the way they do. Political commentary is largely indistinguishable from gossip. So there is no analytical way of predicting why people vote the way they do, and there are way too many variables involved. How much of an effect all of this has on election results, we just don't know. And I would say that social media in particular has been overstated.
So social media might have reached critical mass in India, but how can it help political parties?
So we use these a lot.
At his Mumbai offices, Mahesh Murthy says the same strategies he uses to promote his corporate clients could also work for political parties. He says they can run the Twitter accounts of political parties just as they do for Cadbury Dairy Milk, generating what he calls remark-worthy tweets.
So the secret to this is to find a message that we call remark-worthy. Remark-worthy to the point that it should stand out among all the messages I get. I should like it, I should take note of it, and I should be happy enough about it to think that my friends would like to hear it. So in politics, you already have people who are absolutely willing to retweet anything interesting, either about their own party or interestingly negative about the opposing party. So that's actually simpler than doing it for brands, because nobody is really waiting to retweet something about a chocolate. Nobody is waiting to retweet something about a cola. You need to give people a lot more reason for them to retweet that. To get people to retweet or to say remark-worthy things about politics is not too difficult.
Similarly, Pinstorm can set up and run hundreds of Facebook pages for political parties and their candidates. Just again like they do for Cadbury, reacting to events in real time.
I think one of the key things out here is the ability to capitalize very quickly on an event or momentum. So if you've seen, if you're on Facebook or Twitter, you're seeing what Cadbury Dairy Milk is doing, in terms of, the ongoing the cricket series. When you use the same kind of thinking out there with politics, what you're really trying to do is figure out, okay, now we know that there's an election year coming up, and there's parties dying to capitalize on somebody else's missteps. So if there's somebody who says something at a speech, it gets immediately retweeted and passed around, and it is able to hit, pretty much national levels of spread even before the television channels, and one day before the newspapers can get to it, and 1 week before the magazines can get to it.
Pinstorm says they can go one step further with software that maps online chatter, which they use to solve customer complaints for clients like Airtel.
We do Airtel. Airtel is talked about 15,000 times a day. ICICI Bank is talked about 8,000 times a day on an average. So every one of those times, our software picks it up, measures, is it positive, is it negative, how big is it trending, should we jump on it, not jump on it. So as you can see,
Mahesh says the same software can map chatter about political buzz, letting parties know their strong and weak areas.
for us, it's, we have the ability to say who's chatting about you where in India. So what's the chatter about you in Raebareli? What's the chatter about you in Hyderabad? What's the chatter about you in Bangalore? What's the chatter about you in Amethi? And so on and so forth, right? So we have the ability to pick up chatter. This is hugely powerful for a politician who wants to know what's the chatter in his constituency.
It's expensive. Social media is probably going to eat up between 20 to 30% of the total budgets in terms of media spends. People have to come to terms with the fact that this is not an inexpensive medium. Two, that it also involves, you're not just consuming content, you're also consuming bandwidth. So you need to have those pipes, and you need to have the ability to fill those pipes. So unfortunately, the common kind of error that people make is, oh, this is cheap, we should do this. That's not the reason you should do it. You should do it because young people are listening to it more. Young urban people are listening to it a lot, and because these people are the actual influence makers even outside urban centers.